We're living in a very dynamic time and change is only accelerating. Standards have a really important place actually in times of change. People need guidance and people need know-how. At BSI, we're really involved in the whole life cycle of standards, and we're all about helping organisations be the very best that they can be. Standards have to be relevant, and we have to help organisations with the problems on the fringes of the future. So standards are a piece of consensus best practice, agreed sort of measurements, metrics, ways of doing things effectively. And they can be applied all the way from technical products, all the way through to systems and processes. But the critical thing is that they're generated from consensus. So it really is kind of a group best practice that's condensed into a standard. Standards are really important in a number of different ways. I mean, the first is that they guarantee that a product, for example, meets a particular specification. So if you think about it, the modern supply chain is completely underpinned by standards. They are vital in terms of innovation because it means that we can trust new technologies, we can trust new ways of doing things. And so when I think about some of the biggest problems that we have in our world today, particularly around sustainability, for example, or whether it's about digital trust, given the world is becoming so digital, actually in those areas, standards can be hugely important in terms of driving change. The early days of BSI were all around engineering standards, effectively. So very much around product and technical standards. The original focus for BSI was around standards with regards to steel sections. So a very technical kind of piece of engineering requirement. That was the turn of the 20th century. We actually became formally incorporated and we have a royal charter that was granted in 1929. We became BSI, British Standards Institution, in 1931, so we've got a long history. In the 1970s, BSI actually started the first kind of quality management standard that then became an international standard. That standard is used by over 1 million organisations still today, and honestly that underpins global trade. So that quality management standard, the most highly kind of used standard in the world, was originated by BSI. If I fast forward to the 1990s, there were two really important standards that were developed then. The first one was around environmental management, and again, today that standard is still used and applied, obviously refreshed. And the other one that is incredibly important is around information security management. That came about in the mid-1990s. We have to engage with thought leaders in key spaces. We're obviously very engaged with government around the world. We're really trying to kind of keep ahead of the trends and what's happening from an innovation perspective. It's absolutely vital that those standards are relevant and we understand where innovation is trending and where it's going. How standards can help accelerate that innovation is key. I think there's a huge focus around sustainability in the standards shaping world. It's been an area where we've been very active for many years, but I think we have to redouble our efforts and ensure that the standards that we have are really kind of best placed to help organisations deal with the changes that they have to make. And that means not just changes in very specific net zero standards, for example, but also taking some of the fundamental standards like the quality management standard, like the information security standard, and ensure that they are also sustainable. So it's a huge area of focus for BSI. We've been engaged in the Faraday Battery Challenge, which is incredibly important for the UK government. We've been engaged in energy smart appliances, and that's both the specification, the requirements for appliances, but also the systems architecture that allows those appliances to work to make sure that the electricity grid doesn't get overloaded, for example. international cooperation and international standards are incredibly important because we are a single global community. That was really reinforced through COVID. And so I think the role of international standards and BSI's role as ISO in the UK is incredibly important in terms of dealing with some of the big changes and the big challenges that are coming our way.